Couldn't have this. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Administrative Committee meeting for the Moscow City Council. It is July 23rd. It is right next to August, for those of you that aren't keeping track. I am Gina Terusio. To my right is Art Bedke, and to my left is Ann Zabala. To our far left is Jen Piffner, representing city staff. Okay, so the first item on our agenda is the approval of the Administrative Committee meeting minutes from June 25th.
Look good to me.
Okay, we'll approve those, ma'am. Our second item is the amended fair housing resolution. Mr. Bill Belknap. Good afternoon. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Good.
So as the council may be aware, as a grant recipient of Community Development Block Grant funds, which are federal pass-through funds from the feds through the states to the local communities, the city is required to positively affirm the promotion of fair housing practices within the city of Moscow. So every time we have a grant application, and the last one we had was in 2012 for the 1912 Center, and most recently we had one this spring in February for the fire trucks, the city council is required to pass the then current language of a resolution affirming the council's promotion of fair housing practices within the city of Moscow. So that's the most recent resolution was passed on February 20th of this year, Resolution 2018-02, with respect to the fire truck application that the city was receiving grant funding for. And a community member, Linda Pike, noticed that while it has all the federal requirements of discrimination, fair housing practices based on race, color, religion, gender, national origin, disability, familial status, it did not include the additional protections the City Council provided through Ordinance 2013-06 that prohibits housing discrimination based on sexual orientation and/or gender identity and expression. So this is a fairly small amendment to update that to reflect those local amendments that occurred in 2013. So the resolution itself notes in the recitations that there was an error and oversight in 2018 in Resolution 2018-02, passed on February 20th, and this new resolution is intended to correct that oversight and that error. So I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you might have.
No questions, just congratulations to Linda Pike on her sharp eyes. Good for her. So bravo.
No, just thank you for the update and glad to pass it.
I say that's consent agenda. Can it be, or does it have to be because it's?
It can be.
Okay, you're good with that? All right, awesome.
Let's fix it and roll on.
All right, Bill,
Yeah.
thank you. Okay, the next item is the proposed public art location, C and Main Street. Kathleen Burns.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Good day.
Good day. Thanks for reminding me August is coming up.
It is. It's almost here.
I know.
Cool.
So I put together a PowerPoint for you guys. My favorite color, green.
It is.
Yes. And so I just wanted to bring your attention to this project because it's been in the book, the Public Art Master Plan, and it was brought to the attention by the MAC to move forward as our next project. So these aren't the best pictures, but this is your C and Main traffic island. You can see the antique store. They're doing the paving project, so it's a little crowded right now. But that's looking across from the Habitat for Humanity store.
Okay.
And so this project, you can see in the Public Art Master Plan, it's actually ranked #1. But we had the library project go through, and that kind of delayed looking for this project. So the goal of the Public Art Master Plan is to produce 10 projects between 2017 and 2026. So I thought I'd bring this to the radar because we did put this in the 19 budget. And it usually takes about 10 months to do a project. By the time you do a call for art or RFQ and RFP, depending on the project, it takes time. So I wanted to bring this to the forefront. So this is not a very good image, but that's kind of like the opportunistic area in green, what's available on this island. It's a pretty small footprint with setbacks from ITD in the city, and that's about the area we have to work with. In working with ITD and their recommendations, they sent us this image on what's allowed on that island and what we can work with. So it's pretty narrow and it's pretty focused as far as the size, which will be a problem but a solution. So I think it'll be a challenge, but it'll be a good challenge. So when we started talking about the public art guidelines and the selection project committee and forming the project committee, you have to have people that represent areas of work. And so the department rep would be in streets, Steve Schulte. Our city council member would be Catherine Bonzo because she serves the MAC. The two MAC members that were nominated and accepted to be on the project are Donna Woolston and Matt Harden. And then as far as a community representative, Sue Scott was in my office and I told her we were gonna look at this project and she said, oh, I'd love to serve. It's kind of like my neighborhood. And I'm like, okay. So then Jared Hopkins is with the ITD, the Idaho Transportation Department, and he's been advising right along. And so some of the non-voting members would be myself as the facilitator, and then we need a landscape architect. So I've talked to Elizabeth Graff, and she's willing to serve on a volunteer basis. And also other city staff, Nicole Baker is here today, and she's visited the site for potential landscaping, Y-scape, working with that. So that's kind of where we're at. And from here, it usually goes on the consent agenda so the full council can hear it.
Okay.
But it goes to council to agree to do the next project and support the project.
Does the tree get to stay?
No. ITD would like it gone 2 years ago, but they've already weighed in on that.
Darn ITD. I don't take back a thing I said earlier.
It is creating a little bit of a problem right now, but yeah. So.
If we get artwork out of it, I say let's carry on because that was one of our north entry
Yes.
projects, and I'm all for that and bring some more interest up to that area.
Good.
And emphasize the fact that there is a traffic island there, because sometimes I think that gets lost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there any conflict with the budget really not being approved yet?
So the planning that would be happening leading up to the budget being approved, where this project has been proposed, and that would be in the FY19 budget that we're having the public hearing on in August, first week of August. This would allow some of the planning efforts to move forward without expending any funds to date, because it's typically planning and pre-planning, writing documentation for RFQs and those types of things, but would allow staff to get kind of a jump on that. The idea being with a 10-month about time frame, shooting for Art Walk to have an unveiling of some sort. So that just allows for that pre-planning prior to the budget being approved, which is why we brought it today.
Okay. You're
Thumbs
in?
up?
Ann? Okay. So let's put this on regular agenda, though, so that we can bring it to the rest of the council,
Yep.
and we can talk about it. How's that? All right, awesome.
Great.
Thank you, Kathleen.
You're welcome.
I believe you should stay here. That's the
Yep.
end of our regular agenda. We do have one report. The ACLU Idaho's 25th anniversary mural project. Kathleen Burns and Kevin Kelp. Welcome.
Hello, thank
Kevin,
you.
how are you?
Just fine, thanks.
Good.
Do you want to
Oh yeah, so I should load up my,
Yeah, he's got it.
I should speak from here then, yeah. So as was already mentioned, my name is Kevin Kelp. I'm here representing the ACLU of Idaho. I was hired by the ACLU as kind of a subject matter expert in large-scale work, creative work. And the project that we're talking about is the 25th anniversary of the ACLU of Idaho mural project. There was a national grant from the ACLU National Office to the ACLU of Idaho to do something to celebrate 25 years of the ACLU in the state. And we threw the project around for a while, and we landed on using the money to put murals up in 3 cities. And there's a really small budget per project because this is a pilot program for the ACLU, and there's a couple of other reasons which we'll talk about earlier. They wanted to do more than 3 with the money, but it just wasn't there. So we landed on 3. The ACLU of Idaho is a nonpartisan nonprofit organization dedicated to the preservation and enhancement of civil liberties and civil rights, specifically in Idaho. And so the work that we're talking about would be created on those themes. So where are we at in the process? We've spent the last few months deploying a call for locations, and that's how I was connected to Kathleen, and that's how we ended up choosing Moscow. And I've done some visiting of the sites to sort of vet the public infrastructure. Is there a public art department that can support assisting us with this work? And then we ended up choosing cities that really were ready to take on projects like this. The next step is going to be to establish subcommittees in each town and then develop a call to artists with the ACLU language and some local context language also. And then, of course, vet those projects, hire artists, and establish timelines. When the ACLU first hired me in July, they wanted all this work to be done by the end of the year. And so that's ambitious, I know, and they know that too. So we're doing what we can to move this quickly. But we also understand that it would be sort of monumental if we were able to get it done. So let's talk really briefly about the call to artists. This committee has worked in this context before, so you understand what this requires, but we want to make sure that we don't demand that any artists produce a really elaborate spec work. The budget's just not there. From the ACLU anyway, to sort of make the call to artists really elaborate. We want to give them a content and messaging prompt. We want to talk about the local context that's important. We want to ask them for some proof of ability, so work you've done in the past, and at least a description of the plans or description of the message of the work and what it might look like. And then a deployment mechanism. The deployment mechanism for the content or for the call to artists would be through Kathleen and through your existing public information mechanism. And then, of course, the selection process and the vetting rounds. This particular town already has a really strong history and a proven ability to vet projects, so we don't need to reinvent that process. But the ACLU is going to want to weigh in at the first round and choose all of the projects that are submitted that they would like, that they believe supports the message of the ACLU, and then we'll pass it off to the local subcommittee to vet the projects from there. Does that make sense? Local considerations, so we've chosen Idaho Falls, the Boise Bench neighborhood of Boise, and Moscow. The subcommittee structure, Kathleen hit on this already with the project you just discussed, so you know that we're going to be careful to have representatives of we call it the affected population or local community stakeholders, building owners, people at this table, I imagine. And again, really sort of creating a situation by which the message of the ACLU can be relayed, but also why it matters to the local population too. So the subject matter will be different for each town. In Moscow, we have a lot of great reasons to bring this work here. This is the 25th anniversary of the Human Rights Commission. Kathleen's talked to me about the Martin Luther King Jr. breakfast. NowPAC is happening here in the fall. And we also have support from a couple of building owners that we've spoken with. So we have a lot of support to bring this work to Moscow. I have this point on here to talk about Moscow as the flagship project for Idaho because in addition to having support from some great building owners, we also have some financial support pledged to bolster the budget, to make the budget big enough to attract really world-class work. And so how that's going to work is, I'm not sure if that's appropriate for this conversation, but we're going to earmark a special donation to the ACLU for this project, for Moscow's piece, to really make a go of it, make a run of it. We don't have that kind of support in Idaho Falls or Boise. They have the public infrastructure to do this well, but we don't have the kind of private support like we have in Moscow. And so I've spoken with the ACLU about making the Moscow project the flagship project for the whole state. So it would be in all the communications materials. We would feature Moscow and what we're doing here as sort of like the face of the project in Idaho. The executive director of the ACLU spoke with me a couple days ago and said, you should also know, Kevin, that the ACLU is piloting this for every state. And so there's a chance that the ACLU will create bigger budgets and deploy these funds to all states, ACLU chapters, to do this work all over the country. And in that case, Moscow would be the flagship project for how we sell that work to every state. So it's a really cool way to talk about what's happening in Moscow. How is private money doing this great public work? Investing in public art and investing in this cause. So it's a cool opportunity for Moscow, and it's because Moscow's presented it as a cool opportunity for us. It's a really great working relationship with Kathleen and with the community here. I wanted to show you this work because one of the building owners that I've spoken with who wants to keep their name out of the record showed me this piece and said, what if we did something really, really big like this? That was just sort of striking and fit right in with the materials on the building. This is in Portland, on 11th Avenue in Portland. And that's what started the conversation about money. You know, I said, well, we're not going to get that done for $3,000. We're going to need 3 times that or 4 times that. And they said, okay, we can do that. You know, they want a mural on their building. They want to get it done. They're excited about the ACLU and what the ACLU is trying to do. So this has all happened in the last few days, right? We've had a really productive few days here in Moscow. So what we're doing right now is pursuing formalization of that agreement with this particular building owner, and after the 1st of August, we can talk more openly about who that is. But it's very cool because it would create a context and create a like a precedent or precedent for how other cities can involve private money to bolster the budget and to create this work. The ACLU doesn't want to crowdfund this work or anything. If they're going to take collaborative funding, they want it to be really precise and lump sum. So anyway, I wanted to show you this piece because I think, you know, with the $3,000 budget in the other towns, we're really limited with the scale of the work, or we're limited with the technical complexity of the work. But if we have a budget, we can do something that would get recognized nationally. So what do we need? So in the conversation here today, I'm here to tell you what exactly it is that we need to get this done. We need support of the local government, obviously. There's a permitting process that we want to kind of get on your radar that Kathleen and I have talked sort of briefly about. There may be an imposition to traffic in the affected area, so I want to get that on your radar. And then, of course, public information assistance. By that I mean we want to deploy the call to artists regionally through your existing contacts. And we also want to make sure we get the public on board with what we're doing through events and promotional materials and things like that. So, but again, we have really great contacts here with private building owners in your town. So it's cool because they're going to end up doing a lot of the work for us. And then this is my contact information, and I'll leave this presentation with you if anybody wants to get a hold of me. Thank you.
I have so many questions, and you won't have any answers because this is the first one. I know. Yeah, this just sounds exciting. How fun.
It's exciting.
So clarify for me one more time how this works. We'll have the RFP or RFQ, correct? And the artist will submit their work, and it would go through a first cut with the ACLU?
Yes.
And then you would
Right.
give Moscow the
So,
group of winners?
well, I think what we're going to need to do is form, just like in the public art master plan, a selection panel. And when I talked to Kevin, we talked about the need for Human Rights Commission to be involved and the need for the Moscow Arts
Awesome.
Commission to be involved.
Yep.
So, and then the neighborhood where the stakeholders in the area that live where the installation will be done. And then possibly, I talked to James Fry, the police chief that is with the Human Rights Commission. So we'll look at who's going to serve and how.
Exactly. Good. Okay. So I guess what I was looking for clarification on was ACLU looks at all of the presentations, and then this group, which sounds gigantic right at the moment, but I'm sure you'll pare it down. The ACLU hands that group of sanctioned, for lack of a better word.
Who
Okay.
knows how many, Our
Right,
goal as the
right.
ACLU is just to make sure that the funding entity is actually conveying a message that they want to put their name on. They're going to put a placard on the building with the ACLU logo, and they want to, all they're going to do is vet the message of the work. I'll be at the table advocating for the quality of the work, but you already
Good.
have a very qualified committee of people here that can advocate for the quality of the work.
Yeah, that we do.
I don't see myself being a voting member of that group of people. I'll help the ACLU with the first round. We'll send you everything that we have, and I'm happy to facilitate that conversation, but honestly, I don't even know if you guys need me. So, well, I'll do whatever you need me to do, I guess, is what I'm
You
saying.
might be Skyping in.
Yeah. I'm happy to be part of the process, but it's important to me personally as a public art advocate, and it's important to the ACLU as the funding entity that the local community be invested in the message and meaning and the way that this work enriches your community. We want to make it transformative. We might have a budget here to really do that, so it's really exciting. So as much as, Kathleen and the local committees can handle vetting the work and investing people in the work, and, we want them to, so.
Awesome. Good.
Well, I'm impressed about the amount of homework that's already gone on. It's all very well thought out. But for staff, is in the realm of unintended consequences, is there any ordinance floating around out there that would be an impediment to putting up a large-scale mural?
Well, Bill can speak to that. We have sign ordinances, but we don't have any mural ordinances.
Mr. Belknap. Mural ordinances?
We don't have a mural ordinance. We do have a sign code, and so long as it doesn't have commercial messaging and doesn't identify a specific commercial entity, then it's defined as being a mural and it's exempted from the sign code.
Awesome.
So I'm assuming, based on the content that we discussed today, there will be no conflict with the sign code.
Good. Okay.
Would there be a conflict at all with the historic building code of any kind like that?
No.
No, okay.
Okay. Thanks,
Yeah,
Bill.
and plus, I also like the fact that this mural harkens back to our very first item that we had on the agenda today, Moscow's non-discrimination ordinances, and I think it fits in very nicely
I do
with
too.
that. I like it.
I do too. Do you have any questions or anything?
You're talking about getting this done by the end of the calendar year, correct?
So,
Or that's the ambition?
the ideal scenario, so let me start by saying, in Idaho Falls and in Boise, these are much smaller scale works. In Boise, we're putting it up on the bench, a neighborhood that's hungry for public art, so they're like moving it through. Idaho Falls is the same way. They have a urban revitalization committee that is going to move on this, which is why we chose the cities we chose. The Moscow project, because it is larger scale, is going to take some more time, but is whatever we can do to eliminate roadblocks and keep it moving, the better, because NowPAC is happening here the third week of September, and if the work can be in progress at that time, it would just be such an exciting way to punctuate that event here with everybody in town for the NowPAC conference. We've also talked about doing an unveiling or a ribbon cutting of the work that might be a fundraiser for the ACLU. These building owners are kind of on board with doing a big party or something. So, if we can do it in the fall, if we can pull it off, we should. We should try to. It just from a public relations perspective, it would be really powerful. So
Would not hurt my feelings at all. And also kudos to whoever the private building people are for stepping it up as well.
I'll tell them.
Indeed. So I think maybe the other three of us might want to know about this coolness.
And we
So-
can pass on the report, but we also anticipate with the speed of the project going forward that you'll have some items coming towards you
Good.
for actual action.
Good.
Actual action. So we will keep you posted, and we can look at coming meetings and where we can best fit that information in, so we can keep you in the loop.
Cool.
Yep.
It's exciting, Kevin. I hope you
I
can do it.
like it.
Thank you, thank you.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, that's the end of our meeting. I would entertain an adjournment.
You look entertained to me.
I am entertained. Oh, that's super cool.
That is